Did you know that Amsterdam's Royal Palace stands on top of 13,659 wooden poles hammered into a swamp, that the city invented the stock market, and that its most popular tourist district was deliberately designed to put vice on display rather than hide it? Most people think they know Amsterdam, canals, bikes, coffee shops, but trust me, you don't know the half of it. These are 10 facts that prove Amsterdam is the most brilliantly engineered, morally complex, and quietly radical city in Europe. Fact number 10, a cafe and a coffee shop are two completely different things. This sounds like a joke. It isn't. In most countries, if you walk into a coffee shop, you get coffee. In Amsterdam, if you walk into a coffee shop, you get cannabis. That's the word. Coffee shop is one word. And under the Dutch gedoogbeleid, the tolerance policy, these establishments have been legally permitted to sell small quantities of cannabis for personal use for decades. If you actually want a cup of coffee, you go to a cafe. This distinction confuses millions of tourists every year. But behind the confusion lies something more interesting than the punchline. Amsterdam built an international reputation on the idea that certain things other cities criminalized and pushed into the shadows, could instead be regulated, taxed, and brought into the open. Whether that worked perfectly is debatable, but the philosophy behind it is unmistakably Amsterdam. The city didn't just tolerate difference, it turned tolerance into a brand. And number 9 is just as unbelievable, but for completely different reasons. Fact number 9, Amsterdam has more bicycles than people. The city has roughly 880,000 registered bicycles for around 900,000 residents. In a city that compact, the numbers almost overlap. But this isn't just a quirky statistic. Amsterdam was built on a human scale. Narrow streets, tight bridges, cobblestones, canals. There is almost no room for cars. So instead of fighting the geography, the city leaned into it. The infrastructure was redesigned around cycling with dedicated bike lanes, traffic signals for cyclists, and multi-story bike garages at the central station. Children ride to school on them. Bankers ride to work in suits. Elderly couples pedal side by side along the canals. The bicycle isn't just transport in Amsterdam, it is identity. Every other major capital is choking on traffic. Amsterdam solved the problem centuries ago by building a city where cars were never the answer. Think that's smart? Number 8 is something else entirely. Fact number 8. The entire city is built on a hidden forest. Amsterdam sits on a bog. The ground beneath the city is a soft, wet mixture of peat, clay, and water, and it cannot support the weight of stone buildings, not even close. So, for centuries, every structure in Amsterdam, every house, every church, every warehouse, every bridge has been built on top of wooden piles. Those piles were driven deep into the mud until they hit a stable layer of sand roughly 12 meters below the surface. The Royal Palace on Dam Square alone rests on 13,659 wooden piles. Central Station sits on around 26,000. Across the entire city, millions of timber poles hold everything in place. The wood survives because it stays submerged. No oxygen means no rot. But when groundwater levels drop, as they have during recent droughts, the tops of those piles dry out and begin to crumble. Experts estimate that hundreds of thousands of Dutch buildings are now at risk. The charming tilt of Amsterdam's canal houses, the way they lean forward or sideways, which tourists find photogenic, is actually a symptom of failing foundations. Amsterdam isn't leaning for character. It's leaning because the ground underneath it is slowly giving way. There is an old Dutch children's rhyme that roughly translates to beautiful Amsterdam built on poles, who would pay if it all fell down. It was meant as a joke. It's becoming less funny every year. The entire city is an engineering miracle balanced on sticks of wood that were hammered into the mud centuries ago, and the clock is ticking on how long they'll hold. Surprised? Number 7 might top all of them. Fact number 7. The canals were not built for beauty, they were built for business. Tourists see the Herengracht, the Keizersgracht, and the Prinsengracht as romantic backdrops, Instagram gold, proposal spots. But when the canal ring was designed in the 17th century, romance was the last thing on anyone's mind. The Grachtengordel, the canal belt, was one of the most ambitious urban planning projects of its era. The semicircular layout was engineered to serve trade, transport, defense, and drainage all at once. Goods arrived by water and were unloaded directly into warehouses that fronted the canals. The width, depth, and spacing of every waterway was calculated for efficiency. Even the houses along the canals were designed with hoisting beams at the top. The staircases inside were too narrow to move furniture, so everything had to be lifted through the windows by rope. The canal ring is not a monument to aesthetics. It is a monument to logistics. The fact that it happens to be beautiful is almost incidental. We are not even halfway yet. Fact number 6. Amsterdam is one of the most multicultural cities in Europe, and it always has been. More than 180 nationalities live in Amsterdam today. Over half the city's population has a migration background. But what makes Amsterdam different is that this isn't new. Diversity has been woven into the city's DNA for centuries. In the 1600s, Amsterdam was already a haven for people fleeing persecution elsewhere. Portuguese and Spanish Jews, French Huguenots, Flemish Protestants, German merchants, and Scandinavian sailors arrived. The city's policy of relative religious tolerance, unusual for its time, made it a magnet for outsiders. That openness wasn't perfect. It wasn't always generous, but it was strategic. Amsterdam understood that talent, money, and skills come from everywhere, and a city that welcomes people who are rejected elsewhere gets to keep what they bring with them. The diamond industry, the printing trade, and the banking sector were all shaped by immigrants who came to Amsterdam because no one else would have them. The city's greatest asset was never its location. It was its willingness to let people in. Walk through the Jordaan, De Pijp, Oost, or New West today, and you'll hear Turkish, Arabic, Surinamese, Indonesian, Polish, and dozens of other languages within a few blocks. Amsterdam isn't diverse because of modern immigration policy. It's diverse because it's been doing this for 400 years? Still with me? Good. Because these next 5 don't even sound real. We're only halfway through, and the next 5 go somewhere much deeper. The invention of modern capitalism, a world-changing trading empire, and the uncomfortable truth about where all that canal house wealth actually came from. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. We've seen the surface. Now let's go beneath it. Fact number 5, De Wallen is not just a red light district, it is a philosophy. The most famous red light district in the world is not hidden. It is not on the outskirts. It is in the oldest part of the city, right next to a church. And that is not an accident. De Wallen exists because Amsterdam made a deliberate choice, one that most cities would never dare to make. Instead of pushing sex work underground, where it becomes invisible, unregulated, and dangerous, the Netherlands chose to bring it into the open. Workers are visible, transactions are taxed, health checks are mandated, the system is imperfect, exploitation still exists, trafficking has not disappeared, but the principle behind it, regulate what you cannot eliminate, control what you cannot prohibit, is the same logic that shaped Amsterdam's drug policy, its euthanasia laws, and its approach to social freedoms more broadly. De Wallen is controversial, it is uncomfortable, and it is one of the most honest reflections of a city's values you will find anywhere in the world. 3 more to go, and each one is harder to believe. Fact number 4. Amsterdam became the diamond capital of Europe. For centuries, Amsterdam was one of the most important diamond-cutting centers on Earth. Rough stones arrived from Africa, India, and South America. Skilled craftsmen, many of them Jewish artisans who had fled persecution in other parts of Europe, turned those stones into perfectly cut gems that were then sold and shipped worldwide. The industry wasn't just about luxury, it was about precision, expertise, and trust. Amsterdam's diamond sector built an entire economy around reputation. Buyers knew that a stone cut in Amsterdam met the highest standard. The trade created jobs, attracted capital, and reinforced the city's image as a place where raw materials were transformed into something extraordinary. That's what Amsterdam has always done, taking something rough and refining it. Whether it's diamonds, trade routes, or social policy, the instinct is the same. Find the raw material, add skill, and export the result. You're not ready for number 3. Fact number 3, the world's first stock exchange was in Amsterdam. In 1602, the Dutch East India Company needed money, enormous amounts of it, to fund expeditions to Asia. So Amsterdam did something no city had ever done before. It invited the public to buy shares in the company. Not loans, not donations. Shares are pieces of ownership that could be bought, sold, and traded on an open market. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange, the Beurs van Hendrik de Keyser, became the first formal securities market in the world. Suddenly, ordinary citizens could invest in global trade. Prices fluctuated based on supply and demand. Speculators emerged. Bubbles formed and burst. The entire modern financial system, including stocks, bonds, derivatives, and market crashes, traces its conceptual origins back to a building in 17th century Amsterdam. Wall Street did not invent capitalism. Amsterdam did. And it did it 400 years ago. The tulip mania of the 1630s, one of the first recorded speculative bubbles in history, happened right here. People traded futures contracts on tulip bulbs that had not even been planted yet. Prices soared to absurd heights and then crashed overnight. The pattern, hype, speculation, and collapse has been repeating in financial markets ever since. Amsterdam did not just create the stock market, it also created the crash. And number 2, this one is the reason for everything. Fact number 2, the VOC made Amsterdam the center of the world, and the cost was staggering. Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie, the Dutch East India Company, known as VOC, is often called the first multinational corporation. At its peak, it had over 70,000 employees. It had its own army, its own navy, its own legal system. It controlled trade routes stretching from the Cape of Good Hope to Japan, and its headquarters were in Amsterdam. The wealth that flowed back from Asia transformed the city. The canal houses, the museums, the civic buildings, the entire Golden Age, all of it was funded directly or indirectly by the profits of the VOC. But that wealth came at a price that Amsterdam rarely talks about. The VOC was not just a trading company, it was an instrument of colonial exploitation, forced labor, territorial conquest, and violence on a massive scale. Populations in Southeast Asia, Southern Africa, and the Pacific were subjugated, displaced, and killed in the pursuit of profit. The beauty of Amsterdam's 17th century architecture is inseparable from the brutality that paid for it. Every canal house is, in some sense, a monument to both achievement and extraction. That is not a comfortable truth, but it is the truth. And number 1, this is the one that puts everything in perspective. Fact number 1, the Golden Age made Amsterdam the most powerful city in the world. And it happened almost by accident. In the early 1600s, Amsterdam was a mid-sized trading town in a small republic that had just fought its way free from the Spanish Empire. It had no king, no empire of its own, no vast military. What it had was water, a harbor, a river, and a location at the crossroads of northern European trade. And it had merchants. Amsterdam did not build an empire through conquest, it built one through commerce. Ships sailed from the harbor to every corner of the known world, spices from Asia, sugar from the Americas, grain from the Baltic, timber from Scandinavia, silk, porcelain, textiles, precious metals. Everything flowed through Amsterdam, and the city took a cut of all of it. At its peak, Amsterdam controlled more global trade than any city on Earth. Its population doubled, its skyline transformed, the canal belt was built, the stock exchange opened, the VOC sent fleets across oceans. Painters like Rembrandt and Vermeer captured the era on canvas, funded by the same merchant class that financed expeditions to the other side of the planet. And all of it, every canal, every painting, every gilder was built on a swamp, held up by wooden poles and powered by the radical idea that a small city with no army and no monarchy could become the center of the world through nothing but trade and nerve. That idea worked. For a century, Amsterdam was the richest, most innovative, most connected city on the planet. And then the money slowed, the empire contracted, the wars came. Amsterdam quietly stepped back from the center of the world stage, but it never disappeared. It just stopped shouting. The evidence is still there. Every time you walk along a canal, look up at a gable stone, or step inside a 400-year-old building that is still standing on a forest of hidden timber, you are standing inside the proof. A swamp that became a superpower, a trading post that helped invent modern finance, a city that let the world in and built something extraordinary out of what arrived. That is the real Amsterdam nobody talks about. If this video changed the way you see Amsterdam, hit that subscribe button. We cover the hidden side of extraordinary places every week. Drop a comment with the fact that shocked you the most.